Hello there everyone. Another tier video here, but we're going to be doing it for the Butcher's Circus. We will be doing it from S to D once again. And some of the similarities to the first one, we will have 5 categories. They'll be ranked S to D. Obviously these are associated with points, S being 5, down to D as 1. Hopefully we get some good discussion as well, or just insightful input from watching battles, or obviously your personal experience of playing. The 5 fields are going to be as follows. The 5 fields are damage, stress damage. I'm going to iterate on stress damage. It's the typical effectiveness of stress damage. There's some characters who do have a stress damage based ability, but you may never use it, and I did actually factor that somewhat into the stress damage build. There's survivability, whether this is Death's Door, ability to heal their cells, or mechanics that will heal their cells or their team, and obviously some skills that will also help block damage or natural protection and HP. There's a lot that goes into survivability. Row versatility, how good are they on your side and attacking the enemy's side? So both of those kind of factor in. And finally we get just the overall skill set. Where do they fit into the party? How good are their actual skills? And how are they going to help you? And the final thing I'll say, as per normal, because a character is in D does not mean they don't have a place in your lineup somewhere. Such as, for example, we'll take a Leper and a Crusader. You don't know their score yet, but each of those individuals definitely have niche strategies that they can be used in, and should obviously be experimented with. But I took them just based on their stats and how they fit into the Butchers and how good they usually end up feeling. Now, let's get to the video. And we're going to start off with the worst and work our way up to the best. Plague Doctor, tier of D. The Plague Doctor scored a total of 13 points. And here's where I started just grading the Plague Doctor on. The damage is okay actually once you start getting the DOTs going, but it's not anything significant or so good that you have to pick a Plague Doctor. The Plague Doctor actually has really good stress damage skills. If you look at them, you can do stress damage to multiple individuals, or really high stress damage to one individual. However, the survivability, the row versatility, and even though I was buffing up the skills or making them sound really good, they're actually just mediocre for Butcher's Circus. The best skill she probably has is actually Embalming Vapors, because it allows someone else to excel, because she's going to take up such a small role that she's not even going to offer that much. There are so many Plague Doctor comps I have abused just by dragging them to the first or second position, and then after that, there's 0 stun resist on her essentially. She's a guaranteed stun, no HP, not a lot of dodge. There's not a lot to keep a Plague Doctor alive, and she certainly doesn't offer enough in positions 1 and 2 to really have the chance of her getting pulled in a pull and push heavy meta. Sad to see it again, but the Leper is in the D tier as well, sitting at 14 points, and for pretty much most of the same reasons, but opposite the Plague Doctor. So the Plague Doctor doesn't like the front, as the Leper doesn't like to be in the back. Now the Leper, you can actually buff up that move resist and all that, but that doesn't stop from other people getting pulled in front of the Leper, or just an unlucky 30% chance of still getting pushed back to that very back row. So the row versatility is still bad. The survivability is actually decent. You can heal yourself and have a lot of HPs. And the stun resist, like I said, is actually okay. So in terms of that, it works pretty well. The damage is always good if you were managed to get off like a revenge, or if you were to boost them. I mean, the damage is always there. And the skills are, once again, they're in the middle kinda. And the stress damage, the only real stress damage is intimidation. We're just critting, we're knocking people to death's door, but certainly not part of a main stress composition for sure. Hellion, tier D. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I really do think that Hellion belongs here. I know that some of you may have a comp with her you really like, probably with Barbaric Yawp, or maybe a breakthrough, but overall, I don't actually think she's all that powerful in terms of her damage. It feels a little lackluster. Her stress damage isn't bad, but there's other characters you're going to see in the top tier that can do what she does, but even a little better. I'll give her props. Her survivability and row diversity aren't bad as well, but her skill set just feels too much raw, heavy damage without really always giving you necessarily that pure damage. It's hard to explain, but she has a very awkward role in Butcher's Circus, and she doesn't feel very good. She doesn't do the bleed job of a Flagellant or a Houndmaster, and she's not really the raw damage dealer as a Leper or someone like maybe the Highwayman with riposte and point blank. Overall, she does have her niche strategies. I just haven't really fought against many Hellion lineups that I haven't been able to abuse, because she can also daze herself with certain abilities which can put you in weird situations, or allow her to go to death's door and then get hit once or twice because you can't get to her to use some of her survivability skills. So with all that being said, I think she's actually in the D tier. So to recap, we have the Hellion, the Leper, and the Plague Doctor all as bottom feeders today, and with actually 2 of those heroes being a little higher in my last tier videos. So it's interesting how you can see the skills don't really necessarily translate to PvP very well. For tier C, we have another 3 individuals. It doesn't really matter which order for these next 2. I was going to pick the Jester for now. I actually really like the Jester, but overall he has a very interesting position. He's often used for the finale kill shot and then also usually battle ballad. Outside of that, he's a little mediocre in damage, but he can be given a trinket to help increase that, and he does have 2 bleeds. Stress damage is essentially non-existent except for killing somebody. Survivability, I gave him just to seeing that because he naturally has a higher dodge, and with some dodge trinkets he can be hard to hit, and his stun resist is so low that he's going to get stunned and all that stuff. His row versatility is pretty good, but I do think his skills overall are actually pretty solid for a team effort, reducing stress effort, and of course bleeding through protection efforts, and then obviously finale for some of those more annoying targets such as Flagellants or Man-at-Arms, where you really just need to get through them quickly. Up next we have the Bounty Hunter, and the biggest thing that hurt the Bounty Hunter was his survivability. He has an okay amount of HP, which helps, but I gave him a D because he can't self-heal, he doesn't have the most HP, and he's just kind of there. It's hard to explain, but he doesn't really offer much in terms of just surviving, which is kind of ironic since he's like a bounty hunter. But without any abilities to try to keep himself alive or have a higher dodge, he just kind of sits there and just gets beat on really easily, and often I attack bounty hunters directly because of this. Because they're so bad at dodging and have such a low stun resistance, honestly you can kind of abuse them fairly easily, and they become more of a point of a weakness rather than an offensive tool. Once you do get the chance, the offensive tool is very good. I think his damage is good. I think he's very row versatile, and of course his skills, I was debating on putting them at an S because he is essentially the one individual for when someone's on death's door. Finish him almost feels like a, anywhere between a 50 and 80% chance to kill. And trust me, if you've played enough Butchers, you cannot underestimate how good it is to have someone who can do a 50 to 80% kill shot. It's just amazing. He will get the special award of Killer because he does have a warm place in my heart. I use them a lot to get to around veteran or champion level, but once you start getting up towards those comps, bounty hunters start getting exposed a little bit for who they are, but they are certainly a killing machine. This one may be controversial again, but I have the Vestal sitting at a C tier. And these are going to be, I'm going to go over the letter grades real quick. The damage is C. She can do in damage. She can be okay in stress. Her survivability is at a B. And I gave her that just because she can AoE heal so much. She's actually kind of annoying to get down a lot. So she can actually be pretty durable in that sense. Her row versatility, if she's not sitting in position 1, she's actually pretty good. Which is why I couldn't justify an S. But definitely an A. She can stun and also do AoE heal in position 2. So even if she goes from 4 to 2, she's not useless. You don't need to panic. That's pretty good. And I do think a lot of her skills are actually pretty good, or at least a couple of them easily accelerate her, like her stun. Just to reiterate what's in the C tier, Vestal, Bounty Hunter, and Jester. And now we'll be moving on to the B tier. First person in the B tier is the Musketeer. And I actually separated the Musketeer and Arbalest this time because they are still very, very similar in terms of their trinkets and most of their skills, but they actually have a little bit of difference in 2 key skills, which is a big deal. Skeet Shot or the Flare are actually different, and the Arbalest can clear essentially everything under the sun, while the Musketeer doesn't really offer any of those strong abilities, such as the Arbalest, which already separates them in terms of how good their skill is. And also the Arbalest can heal bleed with their bandage, unlike the Musketeer, who has to do blight. I think those differences alone, and with the meta, has to put the Musketeer one full tier below the Arbalest. Even though I don't want to stop, the Musketeer does work very well. It can be high damage and mark comps, and does obviously offer that bandage. Musketeers aren't terrible, but if you were to pick between a Musketeer and Arbalest, it's almost always Arbalest with a Musketeer as a backup if you want to run a dual Arbalest, Musketeer, Bounty Hunter, and then whatever else combo. Those are very popular, but you would almost always take an Arbalest first, as we'll say later. Highwayman. This was my top rated person in my other review, and now right about in the middle of the tier here. And the reason for that is the damage is amazing. There's the riposte, there's point blank, there's wicked slice. You name it, he's got it. Even tracking shot. I mean, the Highwayman is so good at damage, but that's also kind of his biggest weakness because that's all he does really well. He technically has a stress damage ability, not all that great. If he gets stunned and hit with an ability or two, he's already at death's door with no chance of self-healing, can't go invis, can't protection, can't block. So really his survivability is actually not that great, but as always his skills and rogue versatility really help save him here. Riposte is always amazing, however, but you definitely need some survivability in Butcher Circus, or at least abilities to heal, and sadly, that's where the Highwayman comes a little short. Grave Robber, 17 points. All the B tier is actually 17 points, which is kind of funny, but they're all very similar to each other, and are kind of interchangeable, which is actually appropriate for their tier, and also their functionality. The Grave Robber was actually an extremely tough one. I struggled whether or not she should be about 18 or 19 points. We're right here at 17. But for the sole fact that she too can suffer some of that survivability issue, even though she can heal herself with certain stuff, she is rather squishy, and once she starts getting exposed via a flare or Mar combo, or it's getting stunned consecutively, she kind of goes downhill very quickly. Now with that out of the way though, her damage is phenomenal. Even if you're not using Shadow Fade into like a lunge, her lunge combo is still very good. Even her panic darts have a decent DOT and also can crit pretty well, which also leads to that excellent stress damage. Since she's more of a single target stress damage dealer, I didn't necessarily give her an S, but with the right trinkets and a critical, she can easily stack 50 plus stress on one opponent, which cannot be underestimated. It's just it's only to one individual, so you're riding all on that. So that's why I only gave her an A in stress. I was debating between that and an S, but I'd definitely put her up there as one of the top A stress damage dealers for sure. Her skills and rogue versatility I put at B. You could argue those up or down as well, but I think overall, right about almost exactly a middle of the pack sounds right for her. I've used her to great success, but I've also had just awkward party comps where I'm like, I don't know what to do with you. Or I've trashed party comps with her because of everything I stated. Too low of HP, if the enemy has a Jester and can increase accuracy, her survivability essentially goes into the tank, and there's not much to do with her. Shieldbreaker, 17 points. Once again, her damage is pretty good. Not really a main stress damage specific character. Obviously some crits and another ability can do stress damage, but overall her main gear is to do physical damage, which she can sometimes be a little lackluster in, but not always. I do give her a survivability a B though, because she actually has Serpent Sway, which can take a couple of hits. So unlike the Highwayman and the Grave Robber, where once they kind of go to death's door, there's game over, she can just Serpent Sway, and I've actually done that in many fights where I've taken 2 more hits, don't have to heal her, and I can keep on going. So in a weird way, she's not a tank, but she can certainly survive a little longer than some of these other damage dealers or supports without a self-heal. The biggest thing I've found out about Shieldbreakers is, if you have a composition that doesn't get ruined by being pulled to the front, her damage has never felt like enough to really derail anything, so I often leave the Shieldbreaker last actually, because she feels more of a pest than she does of an actual threat. So I've often killed the Shieldbreaker's team first, and then gotten to her last, where she lasts a while, but eventually you can't handle 1v2s or 1v3s really if you're a Shieldbreaker. And if I was to give her a special award, she's probably like the 1v1 king though with Serpent Sway. If you have 2 uses left, you can obviously get 4 blocks, and sometimes that's really all you need to beat somebody. So if you're not facing anyone with really high death's door or an incredible dodge, you should be pretty good to go. So to recap the B tier, we have the Shieldbreaker, Grave Robber, Highwayman, and Musketeer, all scoring exactly the same, and I feel pretty confident that those individuals are definitely Bs and not As. A point or 2 difference doesn't sound like a lot, but honestly, it is the edge in this, and you'll see as you get to the A tier, if you played a lot of Butchers, you'll go, well, yeah, they should be higher. And a running joke on my channel, at least I call it a running joke for myself, in the A tier here, I believe how you're going to say it is the Flagellant, not Flagellant. Flagellant is going to come in at 18 points. Damage, I'm going to give him an A, and that's because once again I included DOT, so between the abilities such as like a Sanguinate, Rain of Sorrows, and then you put on Trinkets to add a Blight as well, it's actually some impeccable damage, can really melt people by the 3rd or 4th round. Sneaky damage, but it's definitely there. Stress damage is actually okay, because the lower HP he gets, the more he'll start critting. Rain of Sorrows adds stress, so does Punish and other abilities, so you can actually add stress via Death's Doors and critical strikes and just his abilities naturally, which is pretty good. Survivability and absolute S. He's got Redeem and Ensanguinate, 4 uses total, which means he can almost always get back about half his HP, and whenever he goes to death's door, guess what? He heals other people. It's just something else to consider. Now, the biggest weakness and why he didn't excel into the next tier is row versatility. Many times I've knocked Flagellants back to the 3rd row, and they're often not able to do a lot there, where even heaven forbid they were in the 2nd, I knocked them to the 4th. They just don't offer a lot. You do have to find ways to get them back to the front, and if you knock them back again, they actually become just more of a blood bag leper than they really do. But even in the back row, if they lose their total HP, at least they can redeem someone else, unlike the leper. So definitely deserves to be in the A tier. Arbalest, 18 points. Now we get to the Arbalest. Many of the same things I said about the Musketeer exist here, but you'll see the only difference I put is the skills to an A, and I was even debating maybe an S. Because honestly, the ability Flare and the bandage ability to cure wounds, but it's a decent heal, gets rid of bleed, she can remove stuns, debuffs, marks. She can really trash a lot of the meta stuff with one ability across the whole entire team. What's that? You stun 2 out of my 4 heroes? Nah, 1 hero. I'm gonna get both my heroes' turns back. What's that? You have a mana arms comp? That damage reduction? Not so much. You've got a Hellion who's trying to decrease my accuracy? No. So Flare easily makes her worth having somebody on your team just to counter almost 70 to 80% of the metas. She also has Bellow, which sends her back while doing damage and also shuffles. It's very easy to say her skills are an S. I left them at an A here as of now, because she can be a little bit row dependent sometimes, but I could easily understand why. If someone would say, you know what, I think she's S, I'd probably agree with you on a different day. Occultist, 18 points. Here I am, Mr. Crit Zero himself. All joking aside though, his damage is really what brings him down. He's got great stress damage between the pool and between Abyssal Artillery. He can really actually stack up that. Now, he does get countered by Vestal fairly hard with the Divine Grace ability, but outside of that, he can really start stacking up stress damage with the hits and with the HARs. The survivability is decent because obviously he can heal himself and also has the ability to heal and stealth people, so survivability is pretty good. He does have very low stun resist, which does suck, so once you start getting him in a stun lock cycle and you don't have an Arbalest, just essentially count him out because there's no way he's probably not going to be stunned later, which is a huge issue. But overall, his row versatility and skills is really what's going to let him shine. He's pretty much not useless anywhere between 1 and 4. He can heal, or he can mark for a lot of stress damage, and also mark, which also decreases dodge, which is excellent, and I really do think all of his skills honestly have a place, and it's often difficult to find which ones I actually want to keep on and which ones I don't. So I definitely think he belongs in the A tier once again. And to round out our A tier, so close to the S tier, was the Abomination. Very good at damage. He's got high crits, the ability Rake and Rage. I mean, just when he transforms, amazing. He can actually get some good manacles as well, so he's definitely a damage powerhouse. His stress damage isn't out of this world, but it's certainly higher than many of the other people we've mentioned here before as well. So you can't really underestimate the stress damage. Even a transformation Abomination will do, or a Beast Bile Abomination as well. Survivability is pretty good. He does have an okay amount of HP, along with the fact that you get 2 absolutions, which can heal stress, and also HP, which is very nice. Row versatility, I couldn't quite put it at an S, because if he does get knocked to the 4th row position, he can only heal himself, so he's definitely not an S, but he's got great 1 through 3 capabilities, and I think all of his skills have a purpose somewhere. Probably one of the few characters where I feel like I probably utilized their whole skill set. Maybe not in one battle, but across maybe 5 to 10 for sure. And definitely not all heroes can say you're going to use even maybe 3 out of their 4 skills you have on. Definitely the Abomination has a huge, huge upside. Slam probably being one of the best abilities as well. Breaks guard, sends people back, and it's got a decent accuracy. So definitely somebody you probably should have in many of your compositions. So just to recap, we have the Abomination at 19, 18 to the Occultist, 18 to the Arbalest, and 18 to the Flagellant. And next, we have 4 people who made it to the S tier. Antiquarium, 20 points. The Antiquarium was actually in my lowest tier, and I believe my worst person in my tier video. Well, not so much in the Butcher Circus. She has a place for seems like almost any comp, and pretty much almost any strategy. The thing that stopped her from really excelling was her damage, and I'm even considering her DOT damage. It's only 2 points, has a low accuracy, and doesn't do a lot of damage. Really struggle to justify that going to a B. So here we sit at a C. You could argue maybe a B, but after so many rounds, if you need that to reliably get damage, is it really good damage or is it just chip damage? Also, stress damage, I gave an A. The AoE is pretty good, but it's not the highest, and also what really helps is actually that single target flash powder. It actually adds a lot of stress damage and honestly has some good decrease in accuracy, which is excellent. Survivability is amazing between take cover, obviously restoration heal, increasing dodge. She has so many ways to just save herself and her team. She's definitely an amazing class there. And the reason why I only gave her an A in her row versatility is because if she's in position 1 and 2, she actually cannot use her heal, which is a pretty big deal. It's something you want to bring her along for, so if she can't use that, definitely a smaller advantage for you. But overall, her skills are excellent. She fits into many stress comps very well, and she fits into some pretty good damage comps as well, because obviously you only need 3 HP to get off death's door, and she can certainly give that to you, and her trinkets also allow her to be even more of a capable healer than it originally leads you on to believe. The next two actually come in at 22 points a pop, but because I don't like the one over the other, I'm going to technically rate it lower out of personal vindication. Man at Arms, 22 points, S tier. Damage, I gave it B because riposte and actually with a couple of trinkets, his riposte damage is actually painful. Like, you don't really want to attack into him if people are doing a riposte composition with some extra damage. Definitely hurts. Stress damage is an A and very close to an S, but his Bellow doesn't do the most damage, and since it can't crit, it is still just a flat damage. It will certainly tick your team out over time. There's no way you can't not let someone Bellow. I'd rather have an Antiquarium hit me with the blight and damage compared to a Bellow's stress damage, because it does add up that much faster, and then we'll obviously talk about Bellow itself. This is going to sound a little weird, but I gave the Man at Arms survivability of S, even though he can't self-heal like many other people. But between his ability to bolster, which helps him from stop getting heart attacks, getting hit, the ability to have riposte, which may deter you from attacking him directly. He can also do defender for extra protection. And he also, here we go, has a lot of HP. So between those four, honestly, he's a very survivable person if you give him just the smallest of HP back. He doesn't need a lot, he just needs enough because he has so many other ways of reducing damage, dodging, and harming his foes who attack him. Now honestly, he's like a rock in the composition. And also, his row versatility and skills, they're both S's. He can pretty much use anything, anywhere. That's what you would want to use, like Bellow, anywhere. Defender, anywhere. Bolster, anywhere. It doesn't matter. He can do it practically anywhere. He can also almost riposte from anywhere. So pretty much the only skills you would use, he's shuffle proof. So I don't need to say anything else about that. And his skills, Bellow, it's pretty much only countered by 2 heroes in the game, the Arbalest and the one above him actually. So we'll talk about that. But you should all know this, if a Man at Arm is in your composition with the no stress lineup, it's a very good character. Please don't use him because it's not fun. I'm going to end my personal rant right there. Houndmaster, 22 points. Yes, the Houndmaster. A better form of the Antiquarium, honestly, in my opinion. If I was to pick between an Antiquarium and a Houndmaster, I would pick a Houndmaster, and that's how I kind of obviously separated the two point-wise, which is good. There's definitely more damage on the Houndmaster. You got potential mark comps, and I do believe that his AoE damage just feels a little better with some damage increases and all of that. So definitely a little more in the damage department. Stress damage is a little bit better than Antiquarium's if you're going to count the AoE portion, and he can also get more reliable crits, I feel, with his Hound's Harry. So I think that's a lot better for stress damage. Survivability is pretty darn good. He does have Guard Dog, which is going to massively jack up his dodge, which is huge, and he also does have a self-heal, and then also on top of that, it's a restoration. And just to reiterate, the survivability is about only an A. Even though he can self-heal and get restoration, his HP is rather lower and at 30 or 31. So you figured maybe an attack or two will actually send him to death's door, which can't be said about every character, and that's why he kind of needs that self-heal where he'd actually be significantly worse. But the row versatility and skills are once again very amazing. Hound's Harry can be used almost anywhere. Cry of Havoc, actually with a couple of stress trinkets on, can actually remove a lot of stress. Guard Dog's very good. Blackjack, actually, if you want a stun-oriented Houndmaster, is also very good. So his skills and row versatility definitely let him second position. And if you've been paying attention, we have one hero left. That's right, yo boy, the Crusader. I won't lie, I almost never make a composition without the Crusader. Damage is easily an A between Holy Lance, Zealous Accusation, and Stunning Blow. I put stress damage at an S because of Zealous Accusation alone. The ability to crit, do damage, you can easily knock people down 1 to 1/3 of their health and get them 25 or 30 stress with a single Zealous Accusation. It's an amazing amount of stress in the first 2 positions, an amazing amount of damage, and that's not even the best part of him. This boy is super survivable. He has a 70% natural bleed resist. You know how amazing that is? Without bleed trinkets, he hardly bleeds, has a lot of HP. He does have a low stun resist, but that's really okay because he also has the ability to heal somebody and then also self-heal and heal someone else. So not only can he keep you alive, he can keep himself alive. He can get 2 people off death's door while also clearing debuffs, making that skills an obvious S. And honestly, the only reason why I didn't give him an S in row versatility is once he hits position 3, he obviously can't Zealous or Stun, which is an issue because I do think they're his stronger abilities, but they're not his only abilities. And I have used Holy Lance and obviously Inspiring Cry or Battlefield Medicine in other situations to get people off death's door, or just to give them naturally a little more HP. And heck, he can be a pseudo semi, and I say only semi, Man-at-Arms counter, because realistically, you want him to be doing damage, you want him to be stunning. So if he's the individual who has to clear the damage debuff, it's often going to put you on the back foot, and you're also not healing stress damage, which we talked about the Man-at-Arms pretty darn good at. Overall, that's my list. Maybe you don't agree with the point percentages, but hopefully you at least agree within the quote-unquote tiers I put them in. Some honorable mentions I could easily change right now. I could see the Vestal being an B, and I could see the Grave Robber being an A, and then maybe dropping the Arbalest down to a B, and then maybe the Musketeer down to a C. I could easily swap those guys. Hellion, I could maybe say in the C tier, but I honestly don't know who would have bumped down beside that. I think the Hellion and Butcher Circus, so it's a good idea, it just doesn't execute very well. And then obviously my top pick of Crusader, there's no way I'd be talked out of that, and Plague Doctor as the worst. I just haven't used a Plague Doctor or fought against a good Plague Doctor, so overall I really do think she belongs in that bottom tier, and that award of being the official worst Butcher Circus character in my opinion. Thank you for watching, I hope you liked it, like and subscribe below.